Hello, this is Pierre William Blanc. I'm happy to lead you again in this online short training course on engaging stakeholders. This is the second part of our fourth module, in which we discuss practical stakeholder engagement strategies. Before talking about the practical strategies, it is important that we talk about an important concept in stakeholder engagement, which is knowledge brokers. So let's look at the definition of knowledge brokers. Positions at the interface between the worlds of researchers and decision makers, they are seen as the human force behind knowledge transfer, finding, assessing, and interpreting evidence, facilitating interaction, and identifying emerging research questions. As per this definition, we can understand knowledge brokers can make research and practice more accessible to each other by helping to increase successful dissemination of information and communication between the stakeholders. Knowledge brokers can also stimulate knowledge exchange and enhance stakeholder engagement. Knowledge brokers play a key role in bridging the gap between researchers and policymakers. So, individuals, organizations, or structures that can be intermediary between stakeholders of your research project could contribute to knowledge brokerage. So, knowledge brokers have the ability to understand clearly from each other's perspective in order to interact with stakeholders in a meaningful way. Knowledge brokers also help to address the language and cultural barriers between the research world and policymakers by translating researchers' jargon into clear, concise, and by using language that is easy to understand by all stakeholders. So being a knowledge broker is not easy, and here are some of the key characteristics of a knowledge broker. First, being pragmatic. In this situation, we mean having the ability to break down the research information realistically in a practical way that is meaningful to each stakeholder. In order to do that, a knowledge broker must understand the specifics of the research project and policy process in each setting. Second, a knowledge broker must be able to gather and share information about the research in a timely manner. Third, knowledge broker must be resourceful with available key evidence. So they must have the ability to leverage the research objectives of your research project. Finally, they must communicate with stakeholders. So they have to convey information through interaction and data with the stakeholders. They need to be able to facilitate the spread of knowledge between stakeholders and address the language and cultural barriers between them. So, as you probably notice, successful knowledge brokering requires a range of skills such as communication skills, mediation skills, networking skills, among others, that you are probably going to use in engaging your stakeholder. In this slide, we mentioned 4 important tools that you could use for effective stakeholder engagement: stakeholder mapping, inference mapping, SWOT analysis, problem tree analysis. The first tool we have is a stakeholder mapping. With this tool, you are able to visually represent your stakeholders and their networks. This is also a tool that helps you determine which stakeholder is best positioned to influence your research project. One of the ways you can do a stakeholder mapping is, first, you need to make a list of all the people, organizations, and entities with interest or stake in your research project. Second, you need to categorize them based on their level of power, high or low. Third, determine the means and the effort required to effectively engage them, maybe meeting, phone calls, or SMS. The second tool is the influence mapping. This is one way to do the influence mapping. You could develop a power and influence grid to help you to understand how much power and influence your stakeholders have over your research project. So once you understand that, you want to ensure that you distribute your attention in a way that you use the influence of your stakeholders efficiently towards the achievement of the project objectives. This is also a great tool that you could use to make decisions as to how you want to interact with your stakeholders. The third tool we have is the SWOT analysis. In a SWOT analysis, you're trying to assess the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that your stakeholders could bring to your research project. You can use this tool to develop a good understanding of your stakeholders, categorizing them, knowing their needs, and what they can bring to your research project. The fourth tool is the problem tree analysis. In a problem tree analysis, you're trying to break down the problems faced by your stakeholders and your research project in order to identify a logical connection between this problem. So all these tools allow you to understand more about your stakeholders, about their motivations, and use that to adjust the way you plan to engage your stakeholders and improve your relationship with them. Although each stakeholder is important, it is difficult to give everyone the same amount of your time and attention. It is good to know which tools are more appropriate to better engage each stakeholder, especially the ones who are more likely to contribute to the success of your research project. So this is the end of the second part of Module 4. Here we have the references that we use to prepare this course and the disclaimer to recognize USAID as the primary funding partner for this work. And thank you for attending this course.